Good morning.
Morning. Fire away. I guess the first question, where are you with the coaching search and what type of coach are you looking for? A younger guy, a veteran, or somebody, that has a lot of experience with young guys?
Yeah, well, first of all, I met with Mike yesterday and advised him that he won't be our head coach for next season. I want to start off by saying that, we dealt Mike a really tough hand. He's a good coach. I thought he did a really good job under the circumstances. He kept our players competing and playing hard to the end. Made a few adjustments that we started to see some progress in particular, holding on to the puck a little bit more, zone entries. We were scoring a little bit better 5-on-5 by the end of the year. But look, it was a tough hand we dealt him, all things considered. He's a good hockey man. So, we're going to continue to talk and see how things go over the next 5-6 weeks. But he's the type of person we'd love to keep in the organization going forward. In terms of your question, we're going to get together tomorrow, our hockey operations group. And the first thing we're going to do is, put together an ideal candidate profile. We're going to really go through a very thorough discussion on what we're trying to achieve, what we're looking at. At this stage, all options are open. We're just starting the process. And, once we build that candidate profile, what we're looking for, we'll start to reach out to candidates who we want to interview.
You said Mike will be back. Is there a chance he'll be back as an assistant or?
I said Mike and I will continue to discuss that. Obviously, he's free to speak to other teams right now and see what options are there. But, depending on how things go over the next 6 weeks on his end, our end, I'd love to find an opportunity, whether it's in coaching, player development, front office, scouting. He's a good hockey man. He has a lot of experience, a lot of good ideas, and obviously has a lot of firsthand information on our players and the environment.
Are you with this organization right where you were before you hired Elaine, as far as the leadership is concerned from the bench?
In terms of
the direction of the club, you spent a lot of money then to bring in not only Vigneault, but 2 ex-head coaches.
Mhm.
So as far as the direction of the leadership from the bench and so forth from your coaching staff, where are you? What are you left with after this period of time?
Well, that's, as I said, we're going to go through the process now for trying to identify what we're looking for in the next head coach. But this season was a tough season. I've mentioned that before, and there's certainly a lot of areas we have to improve upon as a team. And you go back to that first season, 1920, we played really well, played the right way. Prior to the pause, we were one of the best teams in the league. We had the puck, and the process was good. The results were good. We were clicking, and clearly the last 2 seasons, we've for various reasons, and we just haven't been able to get back to that level. So certainly that's our goal.
Are you confused as to why that is?
Not necessarily, no.
And that's what obviously you'd be surprised though, as far as what's happened the last 2 years.
Yeah, different circumstances. Last year was a lot different than this year. This year, there was a lot of different factors involved, and we're going to spend the next 4 to 6 weeks as we get into our meetings going through that and looking at everything. Clearly, injuries were a significant part of things, but I think it goes, a little bit deeper than that. We just really struggled this year. We were defending all the time, and that's something we have to look at. We weren't exiting D zone well enough. So there's certainly things we have to look at in terms of our structure, our details. We didn't have the puck enough. And when you defend all the time, bad things happen. So specialty teams clearly were a big issue. At the time we made the coaching change, I believe our PK was 10th or 11th in the league. So we started well. I think the PK and our goaltending were major reasons why we were hanging around a playoff spot until early December. But, as the season went on, the PK fell apart and we couldn't keep the puck out of our net. But going back to process, that's clearly going to be a part of what we're looking to do. We have to defend less. We have to come out of D zone better. I'd like to think that healthy Ryan Ellis would help in that regard. He's an elite puck mover. Cam York, I thought, showed some very good signs this year. Provorov, Sandheimer, obviously players that are good with the puck on their sticks. So I think we have some players currently on our roster that can help us get to a better point in that regard. But, we're going to take some time here the next few weeks to look at all those issues.
Chuck, in late January, we talked to you and Dave Scott. You noted that the plan in the offseason was to aggressively retool. Dave said that he didn't think this was going to take that long to turn around. I guess we really haven't talked to you about bigger picture stuff since then. Does that opinion of yours and Dave's, I guess, does that still hold? You guys still believe you can turn this around quickly and then an aggressive retool this summer is the plan?
Yeah, an aggressive retool to me is being aggressive in every area. And I think we've already started it. We moved 3 quality veteran players at the deadline, and we picked up Owen Tippett. We picked up a 1st-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, a 4th-round pick. We were able to re-sign 3 of our unsigned college kids, 2 of whom could have elected free agency this summer. So, it's being aggressive in all phases. Certainly part of it is we have to get younger. We have to get more talented. We have to get faster. And then we have to aggressively look at trades and free agency and can we add a couple players to supplement what we have here to make this team better. Another element's going to be, obviously the return to health of certain players. I mean, Sean Couturier and Ryan Ellis are players that would be hard to acquire in the offseason. It's hard to acquire a top 2 defenseman with a $6 million cap hit. It's hard to acquire a number 1 centerman. So, we're going to be, certainly hopeful that those players can return and play well. But, this is a little bit slightly different circumstances, but, this offseason could be a little bit like the offseason in 2019. And if you looked at that year, we traded back in the 1st round. We got an extra pick. We traded up in the 2nd round. We traded picks for players. We acquired picks earlier at the deadline. So, you're constantly doing what you can to improve your team, not only for the short term, but the long term. And that's what I guess I call a retool.
So you envision, I'm just trying to drill down exactly kind of where you're coming from here. Do you envision this being an offseason where you guys, look to trade assets to win now, or are you more looking at more of a long-term approach to fixing this?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I mean, young players are going to be a big part of it. And if you look at last offseason, for example, at that point, Morgan Frost was coming off surgery. We weren't expecting him to be able to make the club initially. Cam York, I think, had 5 NHL games. Lezinski was injured. Wade Allison quickly became injured in rookie camp. Tyson Forster got injured early in the season. So a lot of our younger players weren't really in a position to compete. So we signed veteran players. We signed Broussard and Yandel and Nate Thompson, and we picked up Patrick Brown and McEwen on waivers because we simply didn't have the young depth to compete. But a critical part of what we do going forward, whether it's short-term success or long-term success, will be integrating more youth into our team. And I think we're way better positioned this year, not only with hopefully Allison and Lezinski being healthy and able to go, but Cam York now much more experienced, and Morgan Frost played well down the stretch. We've added Owen Tippett, Addard, Cates and Brink came in. Hayden Hodgson emerged out of nowhere. I didn't even know who he was until October. So there's a lot of positive signs in terms of younger assets, and that doesn't even include the Forsters, Wisdoms, Denoye, Lixell, Yinning, a lot of the Fedotov, Samuel Urson, who a really tough injury plagued season, but should be healthy for next year. So the good thing is we'll have a lot more depth in terms of young assets. Obviously, not all of them can make our team, nor maybe not all of them will be good enough to make our team, but some of them will. And that's going to be a big difference next year, where we hopefully have a few more internal options to plug some holes.
Chuck, with the coaching search, you said you'll start looking to see what you want to identify as the qualities for the next head coach. But are you almost at a loss for maybe what you guys want, given Alain Vigneault's top 8 wins and couldn't do it? Mike Yo's got experience and he couldn't really steer it back in the right direction. Are you almost at a loss for maybe what direction you want to go?
No, not at all. I mean, we're gonna sit down and again try to build that ideal candidate profile and really keep all options open and maybe look at it from a little broader perspective. But I don't think we're at a loss at all. But clearly we have to sit down and really drill down in terms of what we're looking for. And then I'm sure there'll be a lot of quality candidates we'll speak to.
Is there a time frame on that search? Or
No.
like, would you like to have the coach in place before the draft or?
No, I think we're aware of the calendar, but the important thing is to get the right coach, get the right fit, the right chemistry. And as long as it takes, that's what we'll take.
Chuck, when you came in here, what were your expectations, hopes about how long it would take to get the team to where you wanted it to be? Did you come in and say, it only needs a couple of things, some tweaks? Did you come in and say, oh, boy, we've got to look at this thing from top to bottom? When you took the job, what was your outlook at that time?
Well, when I took the job, I think, I was pretty aware of the strengths and the weaknesses of the organization. If you looked at our age distribution chart at that point, we had some high-end quality veteran players that were approaching 30 or over 30, whether that was Giroux, Voracek, Van Riemsdyk, Wayne Simmons, Brian Elliott. And then we had a bunch of young assets, 23 and under. We didn't have a lot sort of in that 23 to 30 that in the prime core area. So we knew that to capitalize on the last years of G and Jake being elite players, we would need to probably go outside and add some pieces in that core, and we would need our young players to hit. And if you look at it now, the positive thing is a lot of those young pieces are now 24, 25, 26, and we have a lot more coming behind it. But we still don't have a lot in that 27, 28, 29, 30 range. So I knew it would take time for that group to get to kind of their prime years, which we're seeing now. And we saw, for example, a kid like Sanheim really take a big step this year. Travis Konechny ended the season very well, and to me is poised to have a big year next year. So some of these players are right where they should be, and probably right where they should be from a timing perspective. But clearly that's still our challenge, is how do we continue to build that core and supplement that with veteran players.
Just to follow up on a question Charlie asked, you mentioned a little bit of both, what Charlie kind of framed it as, long-term versus now.
Mhm.
How is that different from what the organization was trying to do before you got here? It seemed very much like that's kind of what the organization was trying to do then too, at 16, 17.
Yeah, well, I can't speak to, you'd have to speak to Ron and about that, but I can't speak to what they were trying to do at that point. Obviously, we had an awful lot of draft picks, I think, between 2014 and 2019. So clearly there was an emphasis on the draft, and with the exception of trading last year's first round pick, we've certainly trying to accumulate as many draft picks as we can as well. And that's, we're clearly trying to get more talent.
Cam Atkinson the other day said he thought this team was too soft to play against, needs to be tougher to play against. Do you agree with that? And is that something that you will look to do to try to improve maybe the toughness of the team on the ice? He said there was a lot of too much room in front of Hart, made it difficult for Hart or whoever was the goalie.
Yeah, I think we did add some bigger players with some toughness this year. I'm not sure toughness was an issue, but going back to what I said earlier, when you defend all the time, you create problems. When you're constantly battling in front of the net, you're constantly battling in the corner. Our ability to get the puck and have better puck support and move the puck more effectively out of our D zone will allow us to play with the puck more often in the offensive zone. And that's where we were in 1920, and that's where we got to get back to.
Chuck, how much of a trickle down effect was there from Ryan Ellis going down? Justin Braun has to move up to the top pair at that point. The third pair kind of struggled all year, and the other issues were what they were.
Yeah. Well, look, I think our third pairing was minus 28 this year in actual 5-on-5 goal differential, which I assume is the worst in the league. And I think we ended up minus 28 or whatever, 5-on-5. So when you don't have players in the right position, it makes it more difficult. But that goes back again to the depth and making sure we have enough options when injuries do happen. And that's why I'm more hopeful next year that we'd have better depth with respect to whether, again, York or Hogberg or Addard or some of these players now have shown they can at least come up here and contribute. York in particular, I mean, he was playing top pairing, probably a little bit too early, but playing top pairing this year. So I think our depth will be better, but clearly when, we set it up so Yandel and Braun would be the third pairing, and Yandel would be power play, Braun would be PK. If we're down a goal, Yandel plays late. If we're up a goal, Braun plays late, and they can spell some of those top four guys in certain situations. And, we asked a lot out of Justin Braun this year and asked a lot out of a lot of our players, but that's the focus right now, is making sure we have better depth and, looking at the market for a veteran player or two, but also knowing that we have some kids that hopefully are better positioned to help us this year.
We asked some players about whether or not they sensed the frustration of the fans in the city. Their message back to us was, we want you to be patient, that we think we can turn this around. What is your message to the fans?
Well, first of all, we're extremely disappointed with our season and appreciate our fans sticking with us. It was a very tough season to stick with us. And, so certainly we understand, I understand that the season was beyond unacceptable. It was a devastating season, but we do have good pieces. And in terms of patience, I don't think we're asking anybody to give us 5, 7, 10 years here. I do believe we have the ability to be much more competitive very quickly. And, the moves we make this summer will determine how quickly, but we'll have another top pick this year. Again, a pretty good influx of young talent coming in, some of whom played pretty well down the stretch. And so I think there's reasons to be optimistic, and yet there's certainly challenges we still face.
Chuck, attendance was down. You guys haven't hosted a playoff game in the Wells Fargo Center in 4 years.
Mhm.
How great a pressure is the lack of revenue and just external sorts of economic factors?
Yeah. Look, Dave Scott and Comcast are great. I mean, of course, the revenue is a concern, but the bigger concern is getting the club to be more competitive. Revenues will follow as we get better. And, our focus is just on getting the best hockey team possible. So fans do want to come back, but the pressure is about winning, not necessarily on revenues, because the two are, inextricably linked.
Chuck, going back to injuries, you obviously mentioned the impact of that. On Saturday, both Ryan Ellis and Joel Farabee essentially said that they probably came back from their injuries too soon. Obviously, Kevin Hayes, kind of a similar situation. Do you think there's a problem here with guys rushing back from injuries too soon? And if so, is that something that you plan to address organizationally this summer?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to sit down with our doctors and our medical staff and our strength and conditioning coaches here in the next couple of weeks, and just a lot of questions. What do we do well? What are we not doing well? Is there something we need to do more of? Are there things we can do from an injury prevention standpoint to prevent injuries before they even happen? We're going to look at our entire structure in terms of our medical side and like we have with analytics and pro scouting and amateur scouting. We're certainly going to look at ways we can invest and improve, that entire area. And, but I think that's questions have already been asked, and we're going to get together and just try to dig down and see what's preventable and what was bad luck, but what can we do and where do we need to add?
You want to get younger ahead of the season, you're trying to bring in more experienced players, more veteran players. Why is that not with the veteran leadership not really help pull this team out of the spiraling that it did? And how does that change your mind about what the makeup of the team needs to be?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. You always need quality veterans, and we did have quality veterans. Some of our quality veterans were not in uniform enough, and when you're not in uniform, it's really difficult to rally the troops and to lead by example because you're not part of the team. And a guy like Ryan Ellis, just an incredibly tough year for him. He played 4 games, I think, and you're not really around the team, and it's hard to have any kind of impact and lead by example or offer advice when you're really not even part of the group. So that certainly was part of it, but I think the players that we did have did provide a lot of leadership. And I think Cam Atkinson was a tremendous example on and off the ice. And, you know, you can go through all our guys. Keith Yandel, certainly a quality guy. Kevin Hayes. These people all worked hard, but, you know, I think our performance was less about the leadership and more, again, about the breakdown in details and process, and probably having players playing higher than what they should. And it got away from us, but leadership is still a real critical part of any team.
Chuck, will you, let's go back to the trade deadline with me for a second. And then you see where you were then, and then you had a bunch of these young kids come in and play, you know, the college guys come up and Owen Tippett as well. And to watch them play, did anything that they did in the last 20 games or so make you think differently about how you might go into some decisions in the offseason, especially since if maybe one or two you sit there and go, oh, well, maybe they could start the season with us, and that might affect someone else along the roster who maybe makes a little bit more money and may not have the room for them. So
Yeah, I guess in some sense, I think we were pretty aware, even going back to last summer, that this coming year, we're going to need some of these young players to play. I mean, you look at guys like Allison and Lezinski need waivers. I mean, these are guys that are 24, 25 years old. And, you know, it's sort of now or never for some of these players. Well, I think what it showed me is that we're going to have some options and have some depth and you know, which is good, because if somebody does get hurt or somebody has a tough camp, then hopefully we have other players that are able to take advantage of that opportunity.
Chuck, how do you evaluate Carter Hart's season? And you mentioned Fedotov a few minutes ago. Are you going to be able to bring him over here, or what's the deal to bring somebody over from Russia?
Yeah, we're hopeful to come to terms with Fedotov in the very near future. And clearly things are a little bit more complicated due to the you know, the situation in Ukraine right now. But you know, we're still expecting that we'll be able to get him the proper paperwork and have him here for next season. In terms of Carter, you know, I thought Carter's season this year was a step up from last year. At 5-on-5, he was, I think, 20th in the league in terms of numbers and effectiveness. Like the rest of our team, everybody struggled on the PK. You know, our whole team, and I think the PK numbers probably drove his overall numbers down a little bit, but 5-on-5, he did a good job. He gave us a chance to win games early in the year. He's 23 years old, and there's not many 23-year-old goalies who are number one goalies in the National Hockey League right now. And yet he's going into his fourth full pro season. So, you know, typically for goaltenders, it's 25, 26 when they truly hit their prime. And so to me, he's on track. He's playing well, and I'm excited about what the future holds.
Is Fedotov a guy that can compete for the number 2 job, or do you think he would need time with the Phantoms next year?
No, he can compete for the number 2 job. He's coming off a remarkable playoff run and good Olympics. And again, I think he's 25. Maybe he's turning 26, but he's right in that age where, you know, he's put his time in, he's developed, and he's ready to go. Like every goalie coming over from the bigger ice surface, you know, sometimes there's a little bit of an adjustment period with angles and you know, in the NHL, there's a lot more traffic at the net, a lot more throwing pucks at the net and jamming the net. So there's certain things that goalies have to adapt to, and some do it quicker than others. But in terms of ability, we think he's ready to challenge for, you know, an important role.
Chuck, going back to something that you said earlier about the team needing more talent. You guys, you know, obviously are pretty slammed up against the salary cap once you bring back your RFAs and whatnot. I guess, given those restraints, I know you said you think this offseason is going to be kind of a combination of win now and looking to the future, but given those cap constraints, might you almost have to take a more future approach, or do you think that you guys can go out there and get the kind of high-end talent that you said back in January this team needs?
Well, it's going to be a little bit of both. And I think we do have some young players with some high-end upside that are currently with us and will still continue to get better. And by that, I mean players like Konechny and Farabee and obviously Travis Sanheim, I thought took a pretty big step this year, and Carter Hart. So I think there are some young players who haven't hit their peak at this point. Some other young players that are whether it's Brink or Cates or Forster, players like this that are going to continue to evolve and impact this team. We'll have a pretty high pick this year that'll be part of our team in probably the relatively near future. So that's got to be a big part of it. And then in terms of adding players from the outside, we have to look at that. We'll have to see from a cap perspective what's realistic and what we can do. But we're certainly going to aggressively look at every option we can to add more talent.
In terms of goaltending depth, we just talked about Fedotoff. Do you have interest in bringing Martin Jones back, and Felix Sandstrom is obviously a potential unrestricted free agent?
Yeah, those are the things we'll get into with the pro scouts and as we get into our meetings here the next 6 weeks. I thought Martin did his job. He came in, he's dependable, he's durable. He particularly after Carter was injured at the end there, he's pretty much able to play every night if you need him to. And like Carter, I thought our goaltending did their job this year. Our goaltending wasn't the reason we struggled defensively. Let's put it that way. And Felix Sandstrom, to me, took a big step. He's battled some injuries in previous years. I thought he took a big step. He played better and better as the year went along in Lehigh Valley. And I thought he came up and played pretty well under the circumstances and got some valuable experience.
Do you anticipate any, you obviously have to hire a new coach. Do you anticipate any changes to the front office? Anything to, change player evaluation, player personnel?
Well, we've done a lot of that in the last year. We've added Alan McCauley as director of player personnel. We brought in Danny Briere, and Danny's been working a lot with Brent and me the last few weeks, in particular for the upcoming draft. And we're really happy with our amateur and pro staffs. We've remade our player development program over the last year, and so we've, again, Dave's been great, allowing us to invest a lot of resources, but I think our staff is tremendous. We're going to look at a couple other areas this summer and ways to continue to invest and improve and, in the off ice resources we provide our players. But, I think over the last 1 to 2 years, we made a lot of changes.
Chuck, in your time here, you've seen the best of Ivan Provorov and maybe some of the worst of him as well. He's been inconsistent at times, been really good at times. There's a lot of opinion out there that he's partner dependent. He tries to do too much if he doesn't have the right guy next to him. Obviously, he seemed a little frustrated the other day when talking to the media. Where do you assess his game at right now, and where does it need to go next season? And it doesn't have to happen like that.
Yeah, well, Ivan's, he's not. He certainly isn't a polarizing figure within our group. We really respect and appreciate what he does. He plays close to 25 minutes a night. He goes back for every puck. He's fearless. He blocks every shot. He competes in front of the net. He has a big shot. He moves the puck at times. He maybe holds on to it a little bit too much. And I think, again, as we get him the right partner like we had in 1920 for him, I thought he was much more effective in that regard. But he gets every top matchup. He gets every defensive zone face-off, basically, first PK. We ask a lot out of Ivan Provorov, and I think he gives us a lot. And as the talent around him improves, like every player, he'll be better, but he's already a pretty good player.
Is there a set process for selecting the next captain? I mean, do the management and coaches decide that primarily, or do players have some input?
Ooh, that one's that's about number 20 on our list right now. So we'll get into that. My assumption is we'll get through the summer and get closer to training camp and sit down and make that assessment. The years I've been around, it's typically a management coaching type of decision. But every time I've been involved in it, it's the management, coaches, and players have all agreed. So, that's down the road.
Are you confused as to where you are with Ryan Ellis right now, or where he was with his injury?
No, I'm actually, this is the best I've felt about things in a while. And I think he spoke to this the other day, and I think he used the term multi-layered is the term he used with me. It's basically multiple injuries. There's no clean and easy one-step solution to the problem. But I think we have a great plan in place now. And, it's a pretty aggressive plan, and I like it because I think there's big upside if all goes as scheduled. And, the goal is to have him back at the beginning of next season.
You like it because that plan does not involve surgery?
Whatever the medical people recommend, but I think this is a plan that has a chance to help him be the best player he can be.
You talk about more questions. Sorry, with Tyson Forster, Chuck, you talked about earlier in the year how he really addresses a need the team has right now, shooting from the flanks, being able to score goals. How quickly, and I know he went through a serious injury, but he's back playing now at the junior level. How quickly do you think he can maybe help you guys?
Well, his team was just eliminated last night, unfortunately for them, but I saw him play some playoff games and really happy where he's at. He was a bit rusty in terms of some of the handles and things like that after missing a year, but the work ethic, his stick, he strips pucks. He's really underrated defensively, and the way he reads the play, his hockey sense. He's got the big shot, sees the ice, but for a young player like that, basically missing the majority of his 19-year-old season, I mean, ideally, you'd like to give him the time to develop, but he has, again, the hockey sense, the skill, the drive, the determination. He has all the intangibles and the skill set that we need. But I'd like to think we have enough depth that we don't have to force anybody into situations where they're not ready to be in. I think like we had to do this year far too often. So the goal with him would be to make sure he's ready when he gets here.
Chuck,
Going back to Ellis for a second.
Sure.
Going back to Ellis for a second. You said you feel like you're in as good of a place, the two of you guys are in as good of a place you've been, you have a plan and whatnot, but I guess my question is, are you entering the offseason assuming that he's going to play at his old level next season? Or are you entering the offseason believing that that's still a question and therefore you have to further address the defense just in case he's not ready?
Well, the good thing, Charlie, is, we're going to see how things progress here over the next, 4, 6, 8 weeks. And that, that's what this plan envisions. Some of his treatments, we'll have a pretty good idea where he's feeling, by the end of June and early July. And that dovetails well with when the bulk of the offseason activity happens. So, we'll know a lot more when we get to those pressure points when you have to make decisions. But again, I know he's hopeful and optimistic, and the medical people I speak to are confident that he'll be able to come back and be a good player for us.
When we talked to Mike before the last game of the season, we asked him about which young player's process had improved the most. First guy he pointed to was Morgan Frost. And if you go back a couple months earlier, he said, if Morgan corrects some of these other areas first on puck, some of the compete stuff, the offense will follow at some point. And that seemed to be the case late in the season. Are you comfortable where Morgan finished off where you can say, okay, this is a guy who's going to help us next year?
I'm certainly much more optimistic. And again, in fairness to Morgan, he missed his entire second year of pro hockey. I think he played 4 periods or something before he got hurt. And so really he's a second year pro who, is a third year pro. So he's missed a whole year of development. What I liked about Morgan this year is he really took to heart the constructive criticism that was given to him, and he worked hard at his game, not just up here, but with Lappy down in Lehigh Valley. And when he came up, and again, ideally, we were hoping probably to get him another 10, 15, 20 games in Lehigh when we brought him back. He was playing first power play, first penalty kill. His play away from the puck he's a smart player, so it's always been good, but he was digging in the areas where we felt he needed to dig in a little bit more. And he did show big improvement in all those areas. And then after that, ironically, the next step was how does he get his offensive confidence back? I think you get so focused on the defensive side, you almost get away from your strengths. And playing with a couple of young players at the end of the year, I thought was great. Oftentimes when you play young players with veterans, they want to defer to the veteran. They want to give the veteran the puck all the time. And I think when you saw those kids playing together, they're peers, they're all equal. And you could see a little bit more of what those players are like. And I thought he finished very strongly, and he needs another big summer, needs to continue to get stronger, get a little bit quicker, like every young player. Pace of play needs to continue to get a little bit better, but he made big strides, and he's a player that, again, every year you go into camp and you hope you get 1 or 2 surprises, where a young player maybe comes in and is even a little bit better than what you hoped. And last year, that for various reasons, it didn't happen. This year, we'd love it to happen, and he's certainly a guy that could be one of those guys.
Chuck, Sam Moran has been kind of a forgotten man. Is he in your future plans at all to give an update on his health? And along those lines, as far as the future, is Claude Giroux, have you closed the door on him when he becomes a free agent, or will you talk to him in the summer?
Well, I can't really speak about players on other teams. I mean, Claude's with the Florida Panthers, and at this stage, we're still just setting up what we're going to do this summer. So, I mean, that's certainly not a question I can answer. As for Sam, no, he won't be able to return to play. Unfortunately, he's had too many knee injuries. He's not going to be in a position to continue his career. And this offseason, we'll sit down with Sam and see if there's something that he would like to do to, going forward. But tremendous kid and huge heart, huge determination. Did everything he could to be a player. No one appreciated being a hockey player better than Sam Moran, but there's just unfortunately too much damage to the knee to resurrect his
You can
career.
try to get him a job in your organization?
Yeah, sit down and see what he wants to do and have those conversations. I've had a couple with him, but just wanted to give him some time. It's been a long road for him. Really, it's very emotional. When you see your career slipping away because of things you can't control.
Chuck, when you spoke about Wade Allison and Tanner Lezinski, you mentioned that the definition of free agents, however you talked about them, as if you expect them to be back next season. Have you made a decision on them? And if so, how confident are you that they're able to take the next step despite all the injuries that they've had?
Yeah, well, when healthy, I'm very confident in both Allison and Lezinski and several of the other players too. Noah Cates, the way he played, and Hayden Hodgson was, again, I don't know, we just kind of stumbled into him, I guess, and I give Lappy a lot of credit for developing him, but a big, strong, heavy kid that could shoot the puck. And, there's a lot of these kids that, again, history shows you not everyone makes it. I understand all that, but when you have a whole bunch of them, some of them are going to make it. And that's what gets me excited. But I thought, like, I'll single out Tanner Lezinski a little bit just because he came off, in the previous 18 months, he's had 2 very difficult surgeries after essentially being healthy his entire career. And when you have those hip surgeries, it often, I know, and speaking to various players that have had them, it often takes up to a year until you feel 100% and you feel like your skating's back. And so he came in, he played very well in Lehigh down the stretch. He battled and, kind of just plowed through and did what he had to do. But, my expectation after another summer of not only rest and rehab, but also training is that he's going to be, in a much better position next year than he was this year. And he's a big, heavy kid. He's smart defensively, can kill penalties. He can play center. He can play wing. He brings some elements that every team wants in their bottom 6, and he's a character kid. So, some of these stories will be written in training camp and time will tell. And our message to all those young players was, come in and come in with a mindset of making the team, and some of them will. And that's the exciting thing.
Last one, Chuck. I think a lot of people can agree that this year was marred by injuries and you guys had a lot of misfortune, but I was curious, how would you assess your off season going into this year? And then do you feel personal pressure in this off season, your 4th one, to kind of really hit and get things back on track?
Well, of course, of course, we're in the business of winning, and when you don't win, then there's pressure. But that's the job, and so I don't think I feel any more pressure this summer than any other off season. And again, I'm fortunate that Dave has given me all the resources to bring in the staff that we have, and we have a great staff. We have a lot of bright people and with a lot of great ideas, and I'm excited about the opportunities we're going to have over the next few weeks to put a game plan together and see what we're able to make happen. But we have good people, we have good backing, we have some good young players. This season, again, injuries were a big part, but we got to get back. And I go back to process and, hopefully with coaching and looking at a few different ways, we can try to have the puck a little bit more often and not, spend so much time in D zone, make the game a little bit easier. But we have a lot of opportunities here. There's challenges, but I look at them as opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities to improve significantly in areas that will make us a better team.
Is there an area you can be specific in, like forwards or certain position you think you need to improve in?
Well, that, we'll see if, and by that, I mean, Ryan Ellis is exhibit A. If, by early July, it looks like he's continuing to make great progress, that's a pretty significant addition to your team. And Cam York, to me, is a young man that is going to have a very bright future in this league, precisely because of the attributes he brings are exactly what we need in terms of the ability to go back, get the puck, skate it if it needs to be skated, make the quick first pass. If that's not there, find the second option. He has all those abilities, and not every defenseman does. So we do have some candidates on defense that can make our defense a lot better, but we'll have to see where those players, where Ellis in particular is going into free agency. Up front, a healthy Sean Couturier makes a big difference. It's going to be very difficult to get a number one center this summer. So Sean is healthy. We believe he is. He's 30 years old next year. I believe it's his age 30 season. He's a pretty good hockey player. But look, we need to score more goals. We need to look at our power play. Who do we have internally that can help there? Where do we spend the money? But right now you can look at every area of our team, but we do have some things coming that can address some of those shortcomings, and we're going to have to make smart decisions.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yep.
Thank you.
Chuck.